Good Tuesday afternoon, and thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Lauren Lemanchek. New this afternoon, Governor Walz unveiling his plan to overhaul Minnesota's Human Services Department. Walz says he wants to strengthen program integrity with the Department of Human Services by centralizing what he calls a complex and confusing system.
And this is not as simple as, well, people didn't care and they weren't watching, whatever. A lot of these are structural barriers or the divisions of how they go once they go to the counties, once they go to the managed care organizations, that we believe that there are better models, there's better technology. It's not going to be without its challenges. Just upgrading those legacy computer systems is a huge undertaking, but they needed to be done. They needed to be done a long time ago, but I think this is the opportunity now all in one to take care of it.
Today's announcement comes on top of the anti-fraud legislation currently being worked on right now at the legislature. That legislation includes increasing penalties for stealing public funds and expanding the ability to audit DHS funds. Today's announcement comes just one day after the DHS employee who blew the whistle on fraud in the state's social services programs all the way back in 2019 shared her story in front of lawmakers. In about 6 minutes of testimony, Faye Bernstein says she faced retaliation from leadership at the Department of Human Services when she flagged irregular contracts and activity. But instead of investigating her concerns, she says the department investigated her. Back in 2019, KARE 11 reported on Bernstein and the issues she raised. She says the department concluded she was questioning the competency of leadership in holding up contracts that had compliance problems, and she was walked out of the building. Bernstein says she believes there will be no change at DHS without mass firings of leadership.
I do not see how we can come through this without a massive change at the Department of Human Services in our leadership. There just really simply has to be firings. And I hate to say that. I hate to see people fired. But there is no other way to turn this around.
According to the chair of the Fraud Oversight Committee, Kristen Robbins, no members of DHS showed up at that hearing. Developing today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says Iranian leaders are, quote, desperate and scrambling, and that the U.S. and its allies are winning the war in Iran, and that today will be the most intense day of strikes in the region.
Ultimately, the aftermath is going to be in America's interests, our interests. We won't live under a nuclear blackmail scenario of conventional missiles that can target our people, which is why the objectives have been scoped from the beginning. Missiles, missile production, a defense industrial base, Navy, all in service of ensuring they don't have nuclear power projection capabilities. That's what matters to President Trump. That's what matters to the American people. And ultimately, that's why we're so laser focused on ensuring those objectives and those objectives alone are met.
The strikes come as Iran launches its own wave of attacks against Israel and the Gulf, and as confusing messaging about the war comes out of the White House. NBC's Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv with details.
We're now in day 11 of this conflict between Israel and the United States on one side and Iran on the other. And so far, we've heard from Defense or War Secretary Pete Hegseth saying in a live address that this could be the most blistering day yet. It sounds as though the United States has no plans to relax their attacks on the Iranians. But this comes a day after President Trump said that all of this could wrap up soon. Well, this isn't the first time that we've heard mixed messages from the same administration executing the same war. Whether or not the Americans do decide to relax their attacks against the Iranians, the Israelis have said, and we heard this from Benjamin Netanyahu, that they will continue their attacks against Iran regardless of what the United States does, whether or not they do decide to lighten the load and lighten their attacks on Iran. Meanwhile, Israel is continuing to execute its offensive in the northern border over in Lebanon, where Hezbollah has been firing back into Israel. We got one report of an incoming projectile from Lebanon just yesterday. That conflict is causing chaos and hardship in Lebanon, with about 500,000 people displaced. Hundreds more have been killed. This looks like the Israelis are going to continue to take Hezbollah to task. Many people we've spoken to say they're hoping that this could finish Hezbollah once and for all. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Tel Aviv.
The war in Iran is having a huge impact on gas prices. AAA shows gas prices in Minnesota are now averaging $3.25 per gallon. That's a quarter more per gallon compared to this time last week. Some relief could be coming down the pipe, though. Oil prices dropped sharply Monday after President Trump signaled the war in Iran could be ending soon. However, if it persists, higher gas prices will too. Developing out of Minneapolis, the city's police chief facing questions from the community about how his department handled Operation Metro Surge. During yesterday's Police Oversight Commission meeting, members of the public accused MPD of failing to protect residents by not intervening when federal agents used excessive force and prioritizing crowd control over community safety.
Throughout this siege, it was the community that protected our neighbors from the reckless, violent, and untrained federal agents that descended on our city. Minneapolis police were largely nowhere to be found and, in every way, utterly failed in your duty to protect the residents and community.
Police Chief Brian O'Hara said his department prioritized public safety, preserving crime scenes, and avoiding escalating tensions. MPD's policy on immigration states that officers will not work with the feds on immigration enforcement, but they're also not able to intervene or obstruct agents from doing their work. It's been almost a month since the Department of Homeland Security shut down, and travelers are beginning to feel the impact. Airports across the country are reporting hours-long security lines. Right now, TSA agents are working without pay until lawmakers reach a funding agreement for DHS. At MSP, though, it'll take you less than 15 minutes to get through security. Most travelers are heading to their spring break destinations. MSP officials say even during peak travel, wait times there are usually lower than other airports across the country.
I think we've seen a couple 30-minute blips, and then the rest have been below that. So that's really good given the high volume of passengers.
Officials say the last weekend of March will be the busiest this spring break. Early mornings between 4 and 6 a.m. are usually the busiest time of day. We are in the fourth week of a government shutdown at the Department of Homeland Security. Democrats are hoping to rein in ICE. Meanwhile, airport security lines are growing and TSA agents are going without pay again. Ken Erdahl spoke to a local agent about how they're working to protect each other and the skies.
It's the calm before the annual spring break travel storm at MSP. But when it does hit in the weeks ahead,
we would hope people going to spring break have a good time, stay safe. We hope the business people stay safe. And you got to remember that there are people working here to try to make that happen for you. And we're not being kept safe.
Neil Gossman is a Vietnam vet who felt called to serve the TSA in 2004.
My youngest daughter was in New York during 9/11. She was on the above ground train and saw the plane hit the second tower.
Despite many improvements in security since, he says agents now are facing a different kind of risk.
Not good. This is the third shutdown in 6 months. People have to pay child care, people have to pay rent. A lot of the landlords are saying, you know, we forgave rent for being late last time, we're not going to do it again.
So Gossman, a treasurer with the local TSA union, says they've partnered once again with the Veep Mobile Food Pantry to provide emergency food boxes this week.
They're going to have to do what they have to do to feed their families.
In other markets like New Orleans, it's already led to staffing shortages and lines that stretched into the parking garage this weekend, causing many to miss flights. Even longer wait times in Houston led the airport to warn travelers to arrive 4 hours early.
What's staffing like right now for you guys here?
Washington says we're overstaffed here. That doesn't seem right to us, but they want the staffing reduced here. This may be a means for them to push people out. It's not clear to us.
What is clear is that optimism for a deal in Washington has fallen, while fears about threats related to another military conflict in Iran keep rising.
This country learned that lesson 20-some years ago about not paying attention to security threats, and it seems like a lot of people have forgotten that lesson. Now there's aggravated issues that we have to be concerned about. I think people need to get serious about running things right and making sure the people who are keeping people safe have their minds on their jobs.
Now, because MSP does have better staffing than some of those other airports, the impact of this shutdown is being felt more behind the scenes here. But Neil says several people did take early retirement last year, and he himself is nearing retirement and only works part-time right now. So he says the biggest concern is for fellow agents, some of whom have had to take on second jobs during previous shutdowns. It's Pride Night at Grand Casino Arena. The Wild are back home hosting Utah, and it's the first game for their new value pack ticket. The offer starts at $75 and includes a ticket to the game, a Sheboygan hot dog, Dutch Crunch chips, and soda. Tonight, you'll also have to look for the new Quinnesota meatball stand, offering an Italian sub and Italian and Swedish meatballs. These new bites are going toward a good cause.
$1.43 does go back to our Wild Foundation to support youth hockey and the firefighters in our community as well. Super excited about that.
We checked just before the newscast, and there are still some value pack tickets available for tonight's game. There are 4 more on the schedule this season. Stick with us. There's more news and weather coming up after the break.